Hey, Manny.
We are now recording and we are live.
All righty. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 5th, 2022 Springs Municipal Advisory Council meeting taking place on Zoom. I call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Again, just a reminder, if it appears that we are hacked at any time, we will end the meeting. So just a reminder to the group. Vice Chair Willett, would you call roll, please?
I will. Councilperson Perot.
Here.
Councilperson Alcaraz is here. Councilperson Lombard.
Here.
And where are you, Avi? Oh, you're way at the top.
That's with A. A is,
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
here.
No, I'm going up. I'm going up the list of the. It actually goes by date.
Oh.
Councilperson Reyes is not quite here yet. Councilperson Avram is here.
Here.
Chair Ituri is here, and I am here.
All righty. Thank you so much. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. It's being live streamed on Facebook in English and Spanish. We will have it on Supervisor Gorin's YouTube channel. So it is available after the meeting as well. So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you to our guests and our audience. And always thank you to Jordy, Lynn Marie, and Karina for their unwavering support. So we have a approval of the minutes from the December 1st meeting.
Chair Ituri, if I may interrupt, we need to announce that there's Spanish interpreting.
Yeah, would you like to do that?
A los miembros de la comunidad que desean escuchar esta reunión en español, contamos con interpretación al español. Por favor de seleccionar el icono de interpretación o interpreting a la parte baja a la derecha de su pantalla. Ahí puede elegir Spanish o en español. Automáticamente escuchará esta reunión en español. Muchísimas gracias a nuestro intérprete, Jordy. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina, and thank you, Jordy. Moving on to the approval of the minutes. Thank you, Chair, Councilmember Lombard, for noticing an error that we made corrections on. I'm wondering if there's any other corrections that need to be made, or if we can get a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Minutes approved. Thank you. Okay. So just a reminder, we do have interpretación en español. Y if you want to make a public comment, please raise your hand, and there will be times during the meeting for you to make public comment, and now would be one of them on anything that is not on the agenda. So if there's any public comment on matters that are not on the agenda. Karina, I see a couple of hands.
Okay, I'm gonna go with the order I see them. Nick and then Mario. Please state your name for the record. At this time, I see two raised hands, Chair Ituri. How much time would you like to allocate for public comment?
3 minutes.
Did I hear 3 minutes?
Thank you.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Nick, if you can hear me, go ahead and unmute, state your name for the record, and make your comment.
Nicholas Kerner. Thank you, Karina. Thank you to the council, as always, for your time. Just here for another update on the skate park. As you may have noticed, the fence has been removed thanks to the help of some very dedicated volunteers. And we are getting great feedback as far as from the skateboard community and other passersby and members of the community, as well as we're noticing some increased use of the park, and we're very excited about that. So that would be kind of the first phase of our project, and we are now going into our fundraising campaign. As well, we have had our current design for the new park tentatively approved by county parks representatives. And we are moving forward on presenting those designs to our builder and start getting some estimates and things of the sort. And I would like to request that that we could perhaps get some time at a future council meeting to present our design to the council. I would as well like to give a bit of a comprehensive history of the park, and that will give everyone hopefully a better idea of some of the nuances that we're working with and things like that. I was graced by a lovely individual who sourced some old documents, newspapers and documents from the original build of the skate park, which have been incredibly helpful. So if that is a possibility, please let me know. We would love to put together a short little presentation in the future. And yeah, so thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Up next, we have Mario. Give me a second, Mario. If you can hear me, go ahead and unmute and state your name for the public record and make your comment.
Buenas tardes, me encantaría hacer este comentario en español. Mi nombre es Mario Castillo, vivo en Kelsey Court, en el área del verano. Este comentario es en relación a la renta de asistencia para nuestra comunidad. Hace ya casi aproximadamente 4 meses, una organización para la cual yo soy voluntario, Comida para Todos, Food for All, realizó varias clínicas de ayuda de renta en colaboración con el Sonoma Valley Housing Group y North Bay Organizing Project. La intención era ayudar a familias a que aplicaran para asistencia de renta con un programa del condado que se llama Gelb. Realizamos 2 exitosas clínicas de asistencia de renta, en la cual muchas personas aplicaron, y aún después de que realizamos las clínicas, personas siguieron interesadas en aplicar. Han pasado meses hasta hoy y ninguna familia ha recibido la ayuda que se les prometió. Es verdaderamente decepcionante que no tengamos el liderazgo necesario para que estas familias reciban ayuda. Hasta este momento no sabemos qué va a pasar con estas aplicaciones, después de que se nos ha informado que la organización con la cual nosotros colaboramos, North Bay Organizing Project, no continuará con el condado y se nos ha informado que las aplicaciones podrían ser transferidas a otra organización. Aún me sigo encontrando con personas en la calle que me preguntan qué ha pasado con su aplicación. Hasta la fecha, ni siquiera una llamada les han dado para hacerles saber si es que van a calificar, si es que van a recibir ayuda o no. Me parece completamente decepcionante y triste la falta de liderazgo, y esperaría que ustedes como grupo hagan algo si es que está en su poder para ayudar a todas estas familias que tanto lo necesitan, particularmente ahora que tenemos una nueva variante con el coronavirus. Gracias por su atención.
Thank you, Mario. I'm wondering if that needs to be translated or if people were able to listen to the translation.
I think if people were not, I think we should translate, yes.
I can do it. My name is Mario Castillo. I live on Kelsey Court. I'm here to talk about 2 rental clinics that were held in collaboration with North Bay Organizing Project and Food for All, Comida para Todos. These 2 rental clinics were held to support families apply for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program that's being run by the county. I feel deceived by the application process because to date, none of the people who have applied have received any kind of any funding or any update on their applications. There's been no communication. We found out that North Bay Organizing Project will not be continuing to support this project. And we, to this date, we've not heard about the transfer of any of the applications, no phone calls. We don't know if people qualified. People approach me in the street and I don't know what to say to them. I'm hoping that the leadership here at the MAC is able to do something because this matter needs attention. I feel deceived by the entire process and a lack of communication. I think I got it.
Hi, Mike, this is Susan. I'm sorry I was a few minutes late. I was on the other MAC meeting. We have overlapping MAC meetings. And I know Karina will give your comments to me, but I missed the beginning of what it is you're referring to.
So I was translating for a comment that was made about the ERAP process and that North Bay Organizing Project and Food for All had run a joint clinic and to this date the people who applied haven't heard anything and been since notified that North Bay is not continuing. So that's what that comment was about.
Okay, thank you. I just had a conversation with the executive director of LaLue Center, Leonardo Lobato, about exactly that, the administration of the ERAF program and the rental assistance. They're making good progress and distributing a lot of funding, but they have 69 still on the waiting list that they're trying to rapidly process and get through. The board just approved additional funding to be distributed through our community organizations, $18 million. We approved it yesterday. And so I need to check on the timing of when the funds will be available. I encouraged Mr. Lobato to contact you, Mike Day, because I had mentioned that the North Bay Organizing Project and you were instrumental in holding a workshop to help process some of the applications. So you might outreach to him and to talk about he was intrigued by that idea. And so you might outreach to him to see if that model has value. But I think the key request that you have right now is to follow through on the applications that were submitted through that process to see where they are in the distribution process or the qualification process. And so do you have a list of those individuals?
I'm not sure about that. I would have to look into that. I think yes, I think we do. We do because they signed up. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that would be helpful if we could regenerate that list through Karina and check in with CDC to figure out where those individuals are on the list for distribution, and furthermore to check on the transition from Cap Sonoma to LaLue Center, if in fact that's happening.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Okay, always a pleasure. It is, we had a rather long discussion yesterday at the board meeting about the fact that we are where we are a year and a half ago with not enough testing sites, people losing work, needing stipends because they need to quarantine, they're off of work, off of school. And I don't know where we're going with this. I don't know that we still have aid programs available, but I know that I stayed home and was researching the availability of COVID testing, and David Rabbit was as well. We both feel a little under the weather. So, and Karina and I have had long conversations about testing and lack of testing, especially in the Valley, but all over. This is a national issue, not a Valley issue, not a Sonoma County issue. And I've encouraged the board to take advocacy, sending letters to our state and federal legislators, explaining why we're in continue to be this economic downturn, because we have so many workers experiencing symptoms of COVID, not being able to get tested when they need to get tested, and perhaps unintentionally exposing others. So I want to assure you that we take this very seriously, and I am very frustrated by it as well. But we are not alone, and we're trying to figure out how we can get more testing. I understand that the state distributed more test kits to our FQHCs, Sonoma Valley Health Center. And so my next outreach is to Cheryl and Mary Carmen. Oh, Mary Carmen, do I see you on here? I don't see you on here. To check out whether or not they do have the tests and how they're going to distribute those tests or have staff availability for the testing. So I sort of combined a couple of thoughts, couple of subject matters here, but I want you to know that it is so difficult for our community to regenerate our economic health when we're undergoing the fifth wave, the fifth surge, and it's serious. Maybe not the symptoms as serious as originally, but economically, family health, school health, this is serious.
Thank you, Supervisor Gorin. We appreciate your time and for you being here. And I hope you feel better soon. Shall we finish with public comment?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other raised hands?
There is one more raised hand. I see Chief Aker. Chief Aker, if you can hear me, if you can unmute and state your name, make your comment, please.
Can you hear me now, Karina?
Yes, go ahead.
Wonderful, thank you. So to just kind of support and I guess accentuate some of the comments that Supervisor Gorin just made, another aspect of this and in terms of what we're feeling as an impact is this surge with Omicron is very real. It has been very, very sudden, and it is having some real impacts, not only on our community members, but on our service providers. And a level that I can speak to in terms of both personally, in terms of our fire and EMS ambulance service, but also being involved in the county on the whole medical service provision in our hospitals. Everybody's feeling the effects right now. And while I completely agree with Supervisor Gorin that it feels like, and what we're seeing is the severity of the impacts of Omicron are not as severe as they were with Delta. What we're seeing is a more widespread, like this is a much more contagious variant, I guess. And so what we're seeing is we've had more positive tests within our agency in the last week and a half than we have in the 2 years or almost 2 years of this pandemic. And I know other hospitals in the area are also seeing a huge impact to their staff. And so while we're not seeing the draw on, and the impact on intensive care unit beds or ICU beds within the hospitals, what we're seeing is a very real impact on the ability to maintain staffing. And whether that's with us as a fire and EMS provider or hospitals as they provide services, that's the impact. And so, I want to reassure our community that we as Sonoma Valley Fire District are doing absolutely everything we can to make sure that we are able to keep our people safe and be able to continue to provide service to our community, because that is our mission and that's our charge, and that's what we take to heart every day. So thank you, Karina. Thank you, Supervisor Gorin.
Thank you, Chief Aker.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. I don't see any more raised hands.
I don't either.
Okay. I'll move on to community announcements. Risk in collaboration with several other organizations will be holding a mental health forum on January 22nd. It's a TBD at this point, but they are in the planning stages. So the hopes is that we will be able to hold that at Hannah. Karina, did you want to add anything else? We see you have the charla.
I do. I have a couple of community event announcements, but I'd like the community to make their announcements before I go. Si algún miembro de la comunidad desea hacer un anuncio comunitario, por favor de utilizar la aplicación de levantar mano en este momento o marcar estrella 9 en su teléfono si ha llamado. I don't see any raised hands, Chair Turi.
Any council members? Hannah?
I know this is kind of in the future, but March 20th, we are tentatively doing a compost giveaway at Larson Park. And we're also going to be doing a creek cleanup that day. Potentially, I'd like to make it something bigger if there's interest, just sort of like almost like a Springs Fest that was had maybe in like 2016. But right now it is a creek cleanup and a compost giveaway, and there's going to be a lot of compost. So if people want to like bring a truck, it's going to be like that. So I'll keep reminding people, but that's it for now.
Thank you, Hannah. Karina?
Yes, thank you. I will make this bilingual. Upcoming charla, January 13th, we will be discussing mental health, coping with mental health, youth, families, and individuals. January 13th, 5:30 via Zoom. Thank you, Supervisor Gorin, for all the continued support with charla. Just to remind the community that testing is available in the Valley, in the Springs Fiesta Plaza Shopping Center next to the movie theaters. Curative is kindly supporting us with the testing to the community Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. and Sundays, 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Park and Ride across the street from La Michoacana. It is recommended to make an appointment if you're able to in advance. And we have heard individuals stating they're having difficulties with making an appointment. And that's because Curative is currently only updating 2 days at a time. So if you're trying to make an appointment for 2 days after their calendar, you won't see any available appointments, but they are available. Please be persistent and patient. You could also show up and scan the barcode because some people may not be able to make their appointments. So we do encourage to continue using the sites available. If you have difficulties and need another site, you can always reach out to Supervisor Gorin's office. I'm available, and we can give you the complete flyer with all the available sites and times. Les queremos recordar que la próxima charla comunitaria es el 13 de enero a las 5:30 de la tarde. A través de Zoom estaremos hablando sobre salud mental y cómo podemos sobrellevar la salud mental de individuos, jóvenes y familiares. También queremos recordarles que se mantienen los sitios para hacerse la prueba aquí en el Valle de Sonoma, en el Springs. Está ubicado en el centro comercial Fiesta Plaza, a un lado del cine, lunes a viernes de 7 de la mañana a 2 de la tarde y los domingos en el estacionamiento al cruzar la calle de la Michoacana de 7 a 2 de la tarde. Se recomienda hacer una cita por adelantado si es posible y si no puede, por favor tenga paciencia. Hemos escuchado reportes de personas que no han podido obtener cita. Es porque el sistema solamente da dos días en anticipación. Pero por favor no se den por vencidos. Si tienen alguna dificultad, pueden contactar a la oficina de la supervisora Gorin. Esta servidora está disponible. Gracias. Thank you, Chair Turi.
Thank you, Karina. So I just want to say for the update, thank you always. I think we do have KSVY here. And Ariel is broadcasting in Spanish for us, so thank you for that. And then Lynn Marie for always taking notes. I also would like to say a personal thank you to the Board of Supervisors and the Council for the honor that you bestowed upon me last month. I was very, very kind of all of you and the kind words, and I just really grateful to all of you for that lovely lovely event that happened last month. I also want to show you, we received this from the health clinic. It says, thank you to the MAC for sponsoring. We sponsored a vaccine clinic a couple of times, and the health clinic just wanted to say thank you. It did come with a box of chocolates that doesn't exist anymore, but I didn't know how to give you each like 2 chocolates. So my family took care of it for us. But anyway, thank you to the health clinic for acknowledging our work. Also, just a reminder on the presentations, there'll be a presentation. I will collect the questions from the council and feed it back to the presenter. We're trying to prevent that back and forth that takes place. We'll take public comment, of course, and then we'll have comments from the commissioners after that. Materials will be distributed if they have not already been distributed to you, and they're also available on the website. We will receive a budget update at the next meeting. And I believe that is the end of my update. I wonder if Supervisor Gorin has anything else that she would like to add before we move into the ad hocs and then our presentations.
Just a quick update. Happy New Year, everyone. And may 2022 be even better than 2021. We had great hopes for 2021, and boy, that took a nosedive really fast. So we're still struggling, and it may be the wave of our future for a while, but it is a pleasure to work with all of you, caring individuals, coming together as a community, acknowledging the very real needs of the community and trying to make a difference. And that's everything that I would expect of you. And I so appreciate what you do as individuals and as a group. We did have our first board meeting of the year on Tuesday. It was just a few short hours ago. And as I said before, I was participating virtually, as was David Rabbit. We were both feeling under the weather and didn't want to expose other members of the board to, hopefully I just have a cold. He's not sure what he has, but my lovely 4-year-old granddaughter came and gave me her Jomi kiss. And boy, talk about COVID, colds just take off. So I was able to see family, and it was lovely to do so, but here I am. And we had a little tussle over being chair of the board. The normal rotation, our vice chair just felt he was not able to perform the duties as chair. And so we had an interesting discussion, very novel, and we made the selection of Supervisor James Gore as our new chair, and Chris Corsi as the vice chair, and David Rabbit as the pro tem. So great folks coming together. 3 men, really? We used to have a women majority on the board, and now those 3 men are in the lineup. All good folks. Nothing against the males of our board. Hannah, thank you so much for your work on distributing compost. And at some point, we will want to give an update to the Springs MAC and the North Sonoma Valley MAC about what is happening at the county. State legislation was passed a couple of years ago regarding removing organic waste, food scraps, from the landfill. It's a requirement. And all counties are trying to figure out how to get the organic waste out of the landfill and into composting where it belongs. And we may be going to, it's coming to the board for a decision in a month or 2, but we may be going to mandatory solid waste pickup throughout the unincorporated areas in a 2-phase process. That means fees, and there'll probably be a lot of community angst and concern about this, because it's both a good thing to have less of the crap in the creeks, and it will take some getting used to. But don't panic yet. We still have a few more months to get there, and I'll make sure that I provide an update for you. I represent the county on the Zero Waste Sonoma board. It really is looking at education and cleanup of hazardous waste. All of the jurisdictions have representatives on that board. So that's the coming attraction. We did have a plea from the cannabis community to alleviate or suspend the taxes. Not surprisingly, the markets, whether they're permitted or unpermitted, have taken a toll on the price of cannabis, and people are really struggling to pay their workforce and even earn a penny from the harvest. So people assumed we were going to be rolling in dough and weed, and maybe we're rolling in weed, but maybe not dough so much. So that's coming back to the board at some point in the future. So that'll end my report. Thank you so much for all you do, and I'm waiting to hear what you have to say on the future items.
Thank you, Supervisor Gorin. Thank you for your time and sharing information with us. We appreciate it. Okay. We have our ad hocs. So just a reminder, we got kind of, yes. So we have, I don't think we have Dana on tonight. I don't know if Iris, if you have anything on Map Your Neighborhood.
I don't. We are in definitely a slow period. And it seems as though we probably need to refocus some on more hazards than fire, because realistically, earthquake, of course, is very scary. But that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Fire Safe Council.
Yeah, I think we've made some, I mean, there's not a ton of progress, but I'm putting together some paperwork, and Lucas Patzek, I'm hoping I'm saying his last name right, and then Ray are both helping it along. So I'm excited that we'll probably have a meeting sometime soon to get the community involved. But right now we're just laying the foundation, getting information on how much it would cost to have this woman who does the community assessments of all the risks. We're finding out how much it would cost for her to assess our area, because we will be a very unique fire safe council area, because we are so almost urban, because we're so dense. So nothing super exciting to explain right now, just doing paperwork, but good progress. So more soon.
Thank you, Hannah. Anything from community outreach? Jesus?
Yes. Well, we started the distribution of the flyer already with Hannah and I. We met and decided where we're gonna distribute them. So far, I have posted the flyer at the laundromats, the Mexican stores, and I still missing 2 of them, the post office, and I went to La Luz and they say they were gonna make more copies of it, and they were gonna see if they can distribute it too. I also talked to Father Giorgio. He's the father of the San Leo's Catholic Church. Like I said, I want to do the community outreach. I want to make a public comment at the end of Sunday Mass at 11:30, just because a lot of people from the Springs that are Latino, go there, and that will be a great opportunity. But I know that I had to set some boundaries because we are non-religious, non-partisan organization, correct? Are we a non-partisan, non-religious organization?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So so that we don't be in conflict with that. That is my well. I would like that we need more input on how to do more outreach. I think that now we have to go on to go in virtual outreach, maybe post a flyer online and stuff like that. But so far the flyer it's out there. I still need to post it in some other places, but we're getting there. Thank you.
Thank you. Avram, would you like to talk about the arts? You're on mute.
My lips were moving and no sound. Perfect. I think my wife would love that. In any case, we didn't meet last month. We do have a meeting scheduled for January 10th, next Monday, which will have further updates, obviously, at the February meeting. I did send sort of last minute here to Karina an idea that I want to present before the committee that I thought was both, there it is, beautiful. Thank you, Karina. Really appreciate it. I think this is both artful and practical, and I know how much Supervisor Gorin is into creating alternative forms of transportation and getting people out of their cars. This is a picture from the city of Albany, and it's a great way to park your bike. But not only that, I think it's a beautiful art form, and I think would be quite attractive, and it would be unique to our community. So this is an idea I'm going to put forth before the committee. If anybody has any comments on that, I would appreciate it. I don't know what the cost is, but I can get that. And what do you think, Supervisor Gorin?
Well, I love it. Thank you, Avram. I really appreciate it. And I've been taking photos of really creative art sculptures in the shape of bicycles or other kinds of transportation. I talked with Brian Albee, our, I guess, director of transit at the county. They have funds for that. So if we can work with businesses in the Springs to find a place to safely mount the sculptures, we can find funding for it.
Great.
So let's do it.
Great. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So I see that Iris has a question, and then there's a public comment.
Thank you. I was wondering if Jesus could send the flyer out that was developed.
I think he can send it through Karina. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Thank
And there are other, there might be a way to outreach to other churches too, so that it was, covered the oh dear, whatever it was,
Yes.
the non-denominational thing.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
We have public comment.
Yes, we do have a couple of raised hands. They keep going up and down. I do want to acknowledge Chair Turi, the community outreach ad hoc, which is Jesus and Hannah. They have been working on the compost day that she mentioned earlier in the community event announcement. So I just want to make sure that the community is aware that is part of the work that they've been doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And they're doing a great job of getting information out and getting the notes out and translating them. So they are doing quite a bit. So greatly appreciated.
They are. And also the flyer is bilingual, thanks to both Jesus and Hannah. So Chief Aker, we see your hand raised. If you can hear us, please go ahead and make your comment.
Hi, Karina. Thank you so much. And thank you, Chair Turi. So a couple of comments on what some of the members of the MAC have just mentioned. First of all, with Hannah, I really appreciate the interest in the fire prevention and vegetation management. One of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit more about tonight was that we put Gary Johnson, one of our fire captains, into a full-time prevention position here just this month. He starts next week, and I would strongly encourage a collaboration and connection with you and him in order to be able to move those projects forward in the best way. And I know Gary is really involved. I know a lot of you have worked with Gary before. We're really excited about that opportunity. And secondly, Jesus, I know that reaching out to the faith communities is a really, really positive and good step. I know St. Leo's recently had Sonoma Valley Hospital's new CEO there to provide some information to the congregation. So I don't think there's any issue at all about just providing information. And I think that there's also an additional opportunity with the Sonoma interfaith community. And I'd be happy to reach out to you with some more information with that. I think I'm forgetting his last name, but Rabbi Steve is the head of the interfaith community right now. And that would be an avenue to be able to provide that information to all of the congregations within the Sonoma Valley. And I'll end on a lighter note, certainly of support. Avram, I appreciate your artistic representation and suggestions from Albany. And my question would be, are we going to have Zachary's deep dish pizza here in Sonoma Valley as well? And that ends my comments.
Thank you,
Thank
Chief
you.
Inker. All right, thank you. Okay, so we are going to move on to our presentations. So we have Manning Walker here from the SAFE team. So as many of you know, I now work in Petaluma at Petaluma City Schools, and Manning runs the SAFE team in Petaluma, and I get the pleasure of working closely with him and all the LMFTs that Petaluma City Schools provides for their schools. So he came and presented to us and shared what the SAFE team does in the Petaluma Roanoke Park area. And I thought, I think Sonoma Valley needs to hear about that. So Manning is here to share the work that they've been doing in Petaluma and Roanoke Park. And I'm so grateful to him because Sonoma Valley is not in his area, but he's doing this out of the kindness of his heart. So thank you, Manning, for being here.
Very much. So you want me to just sort of dive in on what we talked about in Petaluma?
Yes, that'd be awesome. Just kind of what you do and how it all works. And I'm sure that there will be questions.
Sure. And something that always comes up whenever I do this for the fire department or another group is people sort of ask who I am and what my rationale for bringing this information is and expertise. My parents did international development work when I was growing up, so I was exposed to pretty extreme trauma overseas, and our home base was the state of Kentucky, which often leads our country in child abuse, neglect, substance abuse, unemployment, etc. I later looked back and realized I had a front row seat to some of that here as well. Grew up sort of in uniform and uniform adjacent, Boy Scouts, Eagle Scout, fire department, went into the Army after college, spent some time as an EMT and a security manager before I found the Cahoots team in Eugene, Oregon, where I worked for 7.5 years doing mobile mental health and behavioral health response. So I had the opportunity to come down here in July of last year when the city of Petaluma was starting a program called the SAFE team. SAFE stands for Specialized Assistance for Everyone. The SAFE team is run as a partnership between Petaluma People Services Center. We provide the personnel, the training, the oversight, etc. And we work closely with the city of Petaluma via Petaluma Police Department and Petaluma Fire Department. We work through the police dispatch system. We use vehicles and radios procured by the police dispatchers and medical equipment procured through the fire department. We respond in pairs with an EMT and a mental health crisis responder. We go out into the field at the discretion of civilians who call us, or police officers who request assistance, or social service providers who request assistance managing particular kinds of needs. And our primary role is de-escalation. And that is to say, when a person is experiencing a crisis and they're in a heightened state where they've sort of overwhelmed their normal coping skills, they're not making rational choices or they're not making safe choices. We validate their experience. Sometimes we have to do that without validating some delusional interpretations of reality, which can be a bit of a dance. Once we get that person de-escalated to the point that they're able to sort of manage their breathing, manage a conversation, keep themselves safe briefly, we begin the process of unpacking what's been going on with them recently, the triggers to their behaviors, coping skills that have worked in the past and broken down in the present. We try to identify and reinvigorate organic supports, such as family relationships, social relationships, existing support structures. And then when appropriate, we make referrals to ongoing services. So we can make referrals through Petaluma People Services Center for family services, elder services, youth counseling, etc., housing assistance as well, or through our community service providers in partnership. So we work closely with Petaluma Valley Hospital and Petaluma Health Center to arrange ongoing medical care for people with chronic issues who are underserved, sometimes because of homelessness, sometimes because of institutional trauma related to involuntary mental health holds. We also try to connect people when appropriate with other kinds of ongoing resources, such as psych providers, case managers, social services appointments, etc. Because we work as a mobile crisis response, a mobile social service, we are authorized to transport clients to any staffed location. So we don't necessarily need to take someone to an ED unless that's absolutely appropriate. We can take someone to the DMV to renew an ID, to a pharmacy to pick up a prescription, to a county or state services office to apply for Medi-Cal, food stamps, etc. Or in certain limited conditions, we can provide someone transport to some place like a bus station, train station for return transport to their city of origin, or to a hotel or motel if they have funds to house themselves temporarily or have received funds from family or friends. About half to 60% of our calls on any given day in the city of Petaluma involve the unhoused for one reason or another. Generally speaking, that is because human behaviors are on public display when one is unhoused due to lack of privacy. So things that are normal human activities, like a disagreement with your partner, trying to find a place to bathe or go to the bathroom, rapidly become reported to the police and treated as a criminal issue. And our job is to attempt to provide access to resources, ways to mitigate those situations. And when necessary, we offer to make contact with the callers and try to do some light community education to reduce those sorts of things in the future. Up in Runner Park and Kotati with our partner program up there, which got started November 1st, we've been doing a lot more direct behavioral health responses, primarily family dispute mediations, a lot of parent-child mediations, a lot of transports to mental health services to avoid involuntary mental health holds. One of the things that we found, both in terms of our data and anecdotally, is that people have a much greater chance of engaging in follow-up services and maintaining a positive rapport with a service provider if they engage voluntarily, rather than if they are forced or coerced into that engagement. So not only do we save money on unnecessary 5150s, we have better long-term client outcomes because people experience less residual institutional trauma and are more likely to follow up on their own terms. That's what we do in a nutshell. Sort of more broadly, services that we can respond to include things like welfare checks. So if someone is sleeping on a park bench, that person does not need to be woken by an officer. They can be checked on by a social worker. If someone is sleeping on someone's property and they want them to move along, maybe get some resources for cold weather or wet weather and not trespass them, that person does not need contact from an officer. If someone is living with a chronically unmanaged wound or chronically unmanaged medical condition, they don't need an ambulance to take them to the hospital. They need a social worker and an EMT to assess them and refer them to an ongoing service provider, help them find a PCP, help them build a relationship with that provider. If someone has washed out of a shelter because of a conflict with a case manager or another resident of the shelter, that's not something that they need to be penalized for. That's something that requires a restorative conversation, mediated interactions, a restoration of that relationship, and re-engagement in those resources. That's the approach that we take to problem solving. We also do some light harm reduction. So we have some supplies pulled together from Planned Parenthood and from Face to Face. So we have a limited number of condoms that we can distribute to people who engage in behaviors like survival sex. And we do have the opportunity to provide needle exchanges as necessary to reduce HIV transmission in the community. We don't run a full-fledged needle exchange service or distribution service. If someone is engaging in a different kind of conversation about substance abuse or about medical needs or social services, and they happen to also be an IV drug user, we can exchange dirty for clean for up to 10 at a time to ensure people don't spread infection. One of the things we're trying to do is identify gaps in service provision as we work and plug them temporarily, such as in this case, harm reduction, until we can find ways to empower standing up a service to meet that need in the community. So for example, at present, we've applied for a grant to try to run a proper harm reduction service. We'll see what comes of that. And in the meantime, that's something we do on the side of providing behavioral health support, because substance abuse is a behavioral health issue. It's a maladaptive coping skill. And in the long term, when we're looking at harm reduction, dead people don't get sober. So.
Could you talk a little bit about how you started and how many days, and then how you were able to increase that work?
Sure. So here in Sonoma County, over the course of late 2019, early 2020, in response to and recognition of social justice movements, and in all honesty, as a result of some mismanagement of some issues locally by local policing authorities, there is something of a request to address certain kinds of community needs in a manner other than law enforcement. And the city of Petaluma reached out to an organization called Crisis Consulting out of Orange County, which is run by another former COOTS member. And that organization sat down with PPD's leadership, and they went through a 250 call sample of the 4,770 some calls that PPD got in the year 2019 and evaluated those for alternative responses. They decided about 15% of those calls could be responded. That's 15% of those calls could be responded to by a mental health responder alone. About 15% of those calls could be responded to by police and mental health responders together. And a huge chunk of those calls were a situation where they didn't have enough information to identify exactly what was going on. Looking into those calls more closely, we identified a variety of interesting features, including overlapping needs. Oftentimes, a call will be presented to 911 in which both a criminal concern or a trespass concern or some other enforcement concern is presented alongside a human need, whether that human need is a housing assistance request, a medical assistance request, or a social services assistance request. And some of those events generate what we call combined responses, which means law enforcement, fire, and or safety team respond as necessary. But a lot of those can be siloed into a diversion to a mental health program. So what we did when we began training and working our personnel in the field, we started at 12 hours a day in Petaluma, 7 days a week back in July. After about 9 weeks, we went to 18 hours a day in Petaluma. Another 3 weeks, we went to 24 hours a day in Petaluma. We run 24/7 in Petaluma now. We run noon to midnight, 7 days a week in Rohnert Park and Cotati right now.
Thank you so much, Manning. Would you mind staying for a minute if there's questions from the council?
I'd be eager to, thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from Hannah? I think your hand is up, so I'll try to collect all these and then feed them back to Manning.
Yeah, sorry if I missed this. So you're taking calls that come into 911 and then just you're responding to them, and then also, if that's correct, if that's not correct, how are you contacted? And what percentage of 911 calls are you currently serving in Petaluma and Rohnert Park? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me collect them all, Manning, and then I'll try to give them all to you so you can just go through the whole, because they'll be repetitive questions. Iris, go ahead.
How this is going to, I don't know, how effective are your services in actually being able to make some longer term changes for the people that you're responding to? Do you collect data on that? Because I know how difficult and complex the problem. I mean, I have an idea of how difficult and complex the problems are that you're addressing with the people that you're meeting.
Thank you, Iris. Are there any other questions from council members? Avram?
Maybe, obviously you've gone into Petaluma and now Cotati, Rohnert Park. What is that process? And if we're interested in, I guess, recommending to the county how we could set up similar services, what would that look like?
Thank you, Avram. Manning, they want to know about, I'm sure you've heard this because you've probably already tracked it all, but your 911 calls, how are you called out? What percentage of these calls are 911 calls, and how are you contacted? The effectiveness of the services and long-term kind of aspects. And you haven't been in existence very long, but maybe you have some sense from other things that you've done. And then what would the process look like if somewhere like Sonoma Valley wanted to have this happen?
Sure. So I'm going to try to address those more or less in order. Let me know if I missed any details. So in terms of a raw percentage, I would need to request that information from the dispatch center, and they'd be able to provide me that information. In terms of actual numbers, right now we're sitting at just under 1,700 calls in the city of Petaluma for 6 months of service. And we're sitting at just over 100 calls for 9 weeks of service in Rohnert Park and Cotati. That's 90 calls in Rohnert Park and Cotati over the course of 9 weeks of service. That's a sizable chunk. We're looking at least 3 or 4 calls a day for our teams on duty. Petaluma PD, for example, will receive anywhere from 15 to 50 calls a day, depending on the nature of the day and the nature of the calls. So for example, someone walking down the side of the 101, that could generate several dozen 911 calls in rapid succession, right? But that would be classed out as one event through the police dispatch center. In order to contact us, you can call the police dispatch center in each of those cities. So Petaluma Police Dispatch, Rohnert Park Police Dispatch, Cotati Police Dispatch, through either the non-emergency dispatch numbers or through 911. The dispatchers are the same. The call takers for both the 911 number and the police non-emergency number are the same call takers in the same dispatch centers for each of those police departments. So they go through the same briefing process in terms of what the services are that are available. So in Petaluma, for example, once a week, I meet with our police liaison and the dispatch supervisor to discuss issues around miscommunication, call types, call volume, specific response needs, et cetera. We have a more electronic communication pattern with our dispatch and police liaisons in Rohnert Park and Cotati, but it's a close working relationship. The calls that come in specifically to the non-emergency number when someone requests the SAFE team, in theory, unless for some reason a dispatcher chooses to exercise some discretion based on recognizing an individual and their history. In theory, if someone requests the SAFE team, they should get the SAFE team. The exception to that being if someone has sounds of violence in the background. Maybe it's a family where we've got an immediate dispute before, but they wait until the child is punching things and throwing things before they call. That would result in police going out alongside the SAFE team. For addresses or persons with a history of violence, the police like to respond first, ensure that the scene is safe, and then the SAFE team responds. The model is currently slowly evolving here. In Eugene, Oregon, where I worked for Cahoots, we'd been in service for 30 years as of last year. And it still was an ongoing conversation on a regular basis. What calls were appropriate, what situations police need to respond to first, et cetera. I'm going to address a subset of that and also address part of obvious questions simultaneously. There are a couple of different ways to approach behavioral health responses in a community. One is what's called the co-response model, and that is police and social work responding simultaneously. And that ranges from the MST team or the SAFE team arriving alongside the police department and working together cooperatively in the scene, managing the individuals and their needs. Or in some cases and in some jurisdictions, particularly rural areas, that might be a sheriff's deputy with a social worker in the car with them. And the co-response model is very effective because the individuals who are alongside the police officers in their vehicles can respond lights and siren in a way that other teams cannot. Those individuals can get called into dynamic calls that other services do not. The downside to that is there are lots of clients who, if you arrive alongside an officer, you've burned your report immediately and you don't even get to have a conversation. So there are some strengths and some weaknesses in the co-response model right off the bat. The alternative response model, or the mobile crisis response model that we implemented here in Petaluma, or you could refer to the Cahoots team in Eugene, Oregon, or you could refer to a variety of other sort of streets outreach teams around the country, whether that's a purely social work team or an integrated team like my team with an EMT and a social worker. The alternative response model is whenever possible, the team responds in lieu of law enforcement, but we're also trained to operate alongside law enforcement when it's appropriate. So depending on the needs of the community, the resources available, the demographics, the geographic area, the distribution of the population, et cetera, there are a variety of things that could dictate the appropriate response pattern based on the community. The model that we implemented in Runner Park and Petaluma, we're looking at approximately $1.1 million for a 24-hour service of 2 people on call 7 days a week. Which that sounds like a lot when you compare the cost of paying or insuring my personnel in their vehicle to law enforcement or fire. There's a dramatic cost savings right off the bat. Our equipment is cheaper. We don't wear bulletproof vests. We don't burn through a lot of disposable equipment. Vehicle maintenance costs are reduced, fuel costs are reduced, et cetera. The other benefit to the alternative response, because you don't respond alongside law enforcement, it's easier to have conversations with folks who have a history of institutional trauma or law enforcement related trauma, particularly in our country, communities of color and immigrant communities and other underserved communities. One of the things we've also identified is that for folks who have intersectional identity in general, regardless of their communities of origin, it can be extremely intimidating to interact with law enforcement because folks from intersectional with intersectional identity, whether that's a gender identity and a racial identity or an ethnic identity and a cultural identity, et cetera, those folks tend to understand that when we look historically at the nature of law enforcement in our communities, they are de facto the most conservative force in the community because the law catches up several decades behind social consciousness evolving. And so for that reason, it can be very, very difficult for some people to engage with those kinds of services.
Manning, the other question was about Iris asking about your long-term data, any longitudinal data.
Right. So I'll give you a couple of successes in Petaluma over the course of the last 6 months. We had an elderly client who was generating multiple police responses on a regular basis because she was having senility-related delusions that one of her children was dying. That generated multiple police responses over time for a mental health issue that was not a holdable issue. It was a chronic resource drain. We built rapport with the client. We managed communications with her children. We communicated with her children and her doctors. We helped them build the paperwork they needed to help transfer her to a memory care facility with minimum trauma to her and the family. We had a couple of individuals who'd been discharged from the Mary Isaac Center run by cops for behavioral issues, been told they would not be allowed to return. With some direct personal support, some mediation, some supervised meetings, we were able to help them restore those relationships, get back into shelter. One of them is currently in line for a permanent supported housing voucher. Looking at my prior service in the city of Eugene and city of Springfield with Cahoots, over the course of the time that I was there, one of the things that we saw a lot there, and I'm seeing very similar numbers on my team's calls here in Petaluma and Runner Park, there are some clients we see once, twice, never again. They just happened to be in town for a weekend. They had a bad incident. They were publicly intoxicated. They needed some support, or they had a crisis because they had a mental health break early in life. They got plugged into some social support, some family support, and stabilized. There are other people that we see every few months or every few weeks, depending on their particular life cycles. So that could be somebody who stays in a hotel the first week or two of the month until their Social Security is gone, and then they need some help getting food boxes or whatever it is later in the month. There are some folks who, because of their history of mental health issues and the medications that they take and the really nasty side effects of some of those medications, they will chronically stop taking their medications every 6 or 8 months, and we have to provide them with gentle but firm support, guidance, help them engage in problem solving other than maybe what they're currently doing. A lot of times that involves family, friends, social connections. Mary Frances is about to speak next. NAMI and Buckaloo are essential services here in Sonoma County. One of the things that we do whenever possible for somebody who's struggling with a mental health issue is for them and their families or friends, we try to engage them in those sort of supportive activities, those group supports. NAMI, for example, has a variety of different kinds of groups I think Mary Frances is going to talk about for helping people early in their journey with mental wellness.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
And I was going to say, there are some folks who, because of the kind of chronic issues that they have, we see them repeatedly week after week after week after week. I can think of one individual that I worked with over the course of 5 years working with this person. We got them plugged into services, sober and off the streets and into housing 3 times before it stuck, right? They get housed, they get services, they blow out of there, things would go wrong. We have to get them re-engaged. But in that case, that individual, he has been successfully housed and sober for the last 4 years.
Thank you. We do have public comment. And I think it's Mario and Chief Aker.
Yes. And Nick.
Maite, can I just, first of all, thank you, Manning. This is Supervisor Gorin. Really appreciate your report. The Board of Supervisors has been researching the CAHOOTS model for 2 to 3 years, trying to figure out, does it make sense to replace our mobile support team that we now have active in the Sonoma Valley and elsewhere? Or does it make sense to expand the MST versus the CAHOOTS model? Measure O is funding part of the program for Petaluma and Rohnert Park, and a similar but different model implemented by Santa Rosa. So we will be evaluating the reports, how successful you are with that, and of course the efficacy of the cost of the programs. And so we will be then making the decision about whether or not we want to expand the model to the unincorporated areas in Sonoma Valley, working with the city of Sonoma, of course, or devise a different model. So just wanted to let you know that indeed we are very aware of this, very supportive of the model. And I want to wish you the best, Manning, and thank you again for your report.
Thank you. If I may, in response to that, I want to point out that the county has been essential in this process. They've set up a coordinated program to make sure that we're measuring all the crisis response teams by the same metrics. They're in the process of helping us develop coordinated documentation system. They've helped us get established using the FireCAD system to have our mobile dispatch terminal, so we're not having unnecessary access to law enforcement information. It's been critical. And from my perspective as a service provider, each of these teams fits a slightly different niche. The MST specifically is for making the determination for mental health holds. My team exclusively relies on voluntary engagement from the client. We do not detain, we do not transport against the person's will, we do not put people on holds. The in-response team in Santa Rosa is sort of an intermediary care team. They can engage at sort of the CAHOOTS level, but they also have the ability to write holds if necessary. And I think there's a role for all of those things in this county.
Thank
and
you.
in most communities.
Thank you.
Maite?
Yes.
Sorry, I had a couple of questions that came up with Manning's responses. Could I ask?
Okay, we're running a little
Looking at
long.
time.
Yeah, we're running. Can you do it in your comment section later?
Sure, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
A los miembros de la comunidad que desean hacer un comentario, por favor de utilizar la aplicación de levantar mano en Zoom y se le otorgará el permiso para hacer su comentario. I do see 3 raised hands en la orden que los veo, Mario, Steve y Nick, in the order that I see them, Mario, Steve, and Nick. Mario, adelante si nos escuchas.
So yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to speak again. Yeah, I am delighted to hear about this program. When a group of us worked hard to, I guess, remove the SRO from a school campus, we were envisioning more of a wraparound services for students, more of a mental health component rather than being a punishment or criminalized, especially BIPOC or people of color. And I'm so curious to know whether this program that is being talked about tonight is culturally sensitive. It's really geared towards responding to the particulars of each community. That would be something to actually that I would love to learn more about. And while I dream of having something similar here in the Valley, I just find it hard to even begin to believe that could happen because of it's really it's demand and it's really investment. And we know that this community is particular in those terms, and every time something is presented to our leadership is oftentimes met with, well, where's the money? How are you going to fund it? It's where's the need? So there is always, we start with that narrative, and it's just unfortunate because we know that this models could work. If we only gave the time to fully understand then how this policing and criminalization affects particularly people of color, the BIPOC community. So just hope that I appreciate this group for bringing this presentation. Is aligning, and I hope that something comes out of this. I guess it's the New Year's, and I hope that I guess it's okay to be hopeful, but I will not hold my breath. But thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you, Mario.
May I address that?
Chief Baker, go ahead.
Can you do it at the end, Manning? Yes, Chief Baker.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So I appreciate Manning's efforts and everyone else's on this with behavioral health. This is obviously a very real, current, and impactful issue for all of us in the community. As the fire and EMS service provider, including the transport ambulance provider for the entire Valley, we feel that impact on a daily basis. And it's very real. There's not as much of an opportunity to deliver people that are facing a behavioral health emergency or issue as there should be. And we're working hard on that in many different levels. I appreciate all of Manning's work. And I appreciate so much the community, the county's passing of Measure O. I will say, as both the president of REDCOM Board of Directors, which is the Fire and EMS Dispatch Center, this is something that we deal with daily throughout our jurisdictions, whether it's Petaluma, Santa Rosa, Sonoma Valley, as well as the Fire Districts Association. I guess I have a couple of things that I would, kind of throw out is that, for us as ambulance service providers, we're stretched very thin. And when we have challenges with where and how to deliver behavioral health patients, it puts a strain on our ability to provide emergency services, not only to those patients, but to other patients. And so we need some additional support. And I am hopeful that Measure O would provide that. I'm very encouraged that through the work with Petaluma and Chief Shock, that is happening, as well as with Santa Rosa and Chief Westrop and Suter. I hope that those efforts can be applied to the Valley. Not only the intentions, but obviously some of the financial resources that were available or are available from Measure O, that those would be available to the Valley as well, to be able to best provide services to all of our communities within the Valley. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief Aker. I think Nick is next.
Yes, Nick, go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes,
You
go
are.
ahead.
I wanted to start by saying that was a very impressive presentation. My background is in clinical case management with homeless individuals, and that was, I would say, one of the most concise presentations that I think I've heard. And so my question is, in my experience, there's a certain amount of stigmatization that comes with certain harm reduction methods, such as needle exchange. And I'm curious if you have any suggestions in surmounting that and making that more palatable for individuals who might not necessarily agree with that philosophy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll let Manning answer at the end. We've got a couple more comments.
I see Lieutenant Piccinini and then Gina. Go ahead. Lieutenant, if you can hear us, go ahead.
Hi, this is Lieutenant Piccinini. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that. Manning, I just want to thank you for your service you've done out there in the field. I recently have talked with Chief Savano from Petaluma PD and did a presentation regarding the SAFE model through my management course that I recently taken, and followed up on all the statistical information that was pulled for the case study for the services in Petaluma. And I do believe you guys are doing a great job out there from the things I've heard from the officers working in Petaluma, and also Chief Savano and Deputy Chief Brian Miller. So thank you for your services and everything you do. There are many instances that basically do not meet the criteria for a law enforcement response. And I believe you hit the nail right on the head in a lot of those incidences. And speaking about the rapport that could be lost when law enforcement is accompanied with some of those social workers. So just thank you for the service that you're doing out there. It's truly appreciated.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
And Gina, go ahead. And state your
Yes,
name.
hi, this is Gina Kuklis. I want to sort of follow up on something Chief Aker said earlier to make a point when he was talking about resources for Sonoma Valley. And the point is advocacy. Advocacy. We have to advocate so Sonoma Valley doesn't get forgotten. So much of the resource focus tends to be on the 101 corridor. What Supervisor Gorin referred to about the emergency response, I mean, personally, so one of the biggest failures we had of a death of a person having a mental health breakdown, son of a personal friend of mine was tased and killed. Some of you may remember that incident. And there was no emergency response for the Valley at the time. I mean, I asked questions, tracked that down. There was an article in the newspaper about it, an editorial about it, and then action was finally taken so that Sonoma Valley did get included in the county's crisis response plan program or team. So incidents like that may be avoided in the future. It was definitely a situation where it needed a response that wasn't simply a law enforcement response. And so I'm great. It's excellent to hear this conversation. I'm glad the MAC is thinking about this. It's not a Springs thing alone. The incident I just mentioned about occurred within the city limits of Sonoma. So this is a valley-wide, and it really needs to be a coordinated effort in advocacy together to make programs like this happen. Maybe it's not this specific SAFE team. I know Supervisor Gorin mentioned a variety of things the county is looking at to figure out what will work best. But my final point is we all got to constantly advocate for our needs to be met. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Okay, so Manning, I think there were two questions. One was about BIPOC and the other was about harm reduction. And I know that the council wants to make some final comments before we move on to our next topic, and just appreciate everything you've brought to us this evening.
So the first thing I want to address is the issue of the SROs and the BIPOC community. So one of the things that I was privy to when I started this program in July is I found out that PPSC had been in conversation with the city of Petaluma, and a second conversation had occurred somewhere with the city of Sonoma and another entity about removal of SROs and replacement with a school resource program instead of officers. There is a model for that. The CAHOOTS program spun off a mobile mental health response clinic. We put responders in middle schools and high schools for a couple hours a day, a couple days a week, to be available to answer everything from mental health issues to sexual health questions to I'm the first person in my family graduated from high school, I don't know what to do. Just sort of fill the gap between the school counselors and other services. And that was something that we found really help connect families with ongoing services and community resources. Particularly because we were in the schools, youth who, in that case, in that community, they're largely Latinx youth, largely Native youth, and largely LGBTQ youth who did not feel comfortable going to conventional resources came to our personnel asking for guidance, accessing resources. So we found that was a way to provide services, utterly bypassing the police response system by being in the schools, working closely with the counselors. My understanding is that the program that was being considered over the summer, the grant that was received was a law enforcement grant and was not able to be used for that program. And there are conversations about what can be done in the future. So I'm optimistic that something may emerge. Regarding harm reduction, more broadly, whether we're talking about economic harm reduction or substance abuse harm reduction, there's a certain gross failure of imagination in the realm of compassion in our communities. When someone loses their house to a fire, it's easy to be compassionate. When someone loses their house to bankruptcy, it's less easy to be compassionate. When someone loses their house to chronic substance abuse, there's very little compassion. When someone dies from cancer, it's heartbreaking. When someone dies from a communicable disease that was picked up because they got a blood transfusion after a car accident, it's heartbreaking. When someone dies from a communicable disease because they have a behavioral health issue that's a negative response to the trauma they suffered as a youth, there's no compassion. And so one of the things that I try to emphasize when I have conversations with even the most bootstrappy of people is, if you believe in second chances, if your social perspective, your religious perspective, your political perspective, if part of your identity is claiming that you believe in second chances, you have to keep people alive to give them second chances. Substance abuse can kill people. HIV will eventually kill people. So there are things about the harm reduction model that are essential to give people the opportunity to change the direction of their lives. And if the goal, because of somebody's philosophy, is to change the direction of their lives rather than mitigate the harm of those behaviors, you have to keep them alive to do that.
Thank you, Manning. So I'm going to speed through final comments from council. Are there any?
Yes.
Go ahead, Iris.
Thank you. I was wondering about the composition of the service providers generally, to make it easier for them to communicate with people, because the way you look does affect the way people perceive you. The other thing is, it seems, I'm wondering if you are more effective in actually convincing people to start taking their meds again than family and friends are, because I know that's the difficult thing. And the other thing is, I was wondering if the service actually helps decrease the stigma that's associated with homelessness and substance abuse, because the in a sense the response is more effective and perhaps quicker. Thank you.
So there are several things there. So as quickly as I can, Right now, about 1/3 of my team is English Spanish bilingual. About half of my team is female. Right now, we are recruiting exclusively bilingual EMTs and crisis workers. One of the things that we find is essential is making sure that that resource exists. There are far too bilingual EMTs in the fire department, far too bilingual social workers available to the police department. So we need to put those resources, those personnel in the field. The other thing that we do when we recruit, when we hire, is we look for a mixture of personal and professional background. Do you come from a background that's intercultural? Do you come from a background where you've overcome some barrier from poverty, et cetera? And have you come from that background and pursued some degree of education that allows you to carry that skill set forward to the community? And that combination of skill set and natural experience provides people the opportunity to create rapport. There are some kinds of clients that you don't need to have lived their experience to empathize with them. There are some kind of clients where you do. And it's important to have those sort of personnel reflected in my team. That's the key thing in terms of representation, is making sure that people can see themselves in their responders. And I am keenly aware that most of the people who are responsible for institutional trauma in our country look like me. They're white and male. And so whenever possible, I want to put a female, a person of color, a person from a marginalized community in the field to do this job. I want to empower them and help them carry that skill set forward for their community, for their family, for themselves, for their professions, et cetera.
Okay. So I'll see if there are any other comments from the council, and then we're going to take a 5-minute break. All right.
I just wanted to say a quick thank you. That was great. And I appreciate your work, Manning, and thank you for exposing us to these models and bringing us a better understanding. Thank you.
Yes, Manning, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it, and just look forward to continuing to partner with you in Petaluma. And hopefully,
feel free to freely distribute my email address for follow-up.
I will. Thank you.
Chair Turi, it looks like Chief Aker raised his hand.
Okay, Chief Aker.
Sorry, one very quick comment on the last statement that Manning made. And I know that Manning's new to the Sonoma Valley, but just wanted to share with him. I know I've shared with the council before, but Sonoma Valley Fire takes a lot of pride in being as representative as we can be and pursuing those very strongly to be representative of our community. We strive to have females as well as bilingual people as part of our workforce, and we're better able to connect with our communities that way. Manning, so we have just recently hired 3 out of 6 of our most recent hires have been Hispanic speaking, bilingual people who are pursuing paramedic certification and are absolutely engaged in our community with LaLuz and other initiatives in absolutely our intention of connecting as best as we can with our community. So that is something that is a very, very strong and high priority for us as a fire district. And we continue to pursue any and all avenues to meet that goal.
Thank you, Chief Baker. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back with our NAMI presentation. Just a quick update on the agenda. Lily Gelb is not here for that agenda item, so we will have the last 3 agenda items after the break. Manning, again, thank you so much. So 5 minutes, everybody. Thank you.
Chair Turi, if I may, just so we have a better, instead of saying 8:03, can we just come back at 8:05?
Yes, we can have 8
Okay.
minutes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manning.
Whenever you're ready, Chair Turi, it is 8:05.
Okie dokie. All right. Mary Frances, thank you for waiting. We appreciate you being here and sharing the work of NAMI with the group. Mental health is a big topic here in the Valley, and grateful for your time.
Absolutely. Will I be able to share my screen? Should I give that a try or?
You should be able to share. Go ahead and try.
Okay. Okay. And just want to blow this up. Can you see that? Okay.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So I will briefly say that I am Executive Director of NAMI, Sonoma County. I'm going to explain what NAMI is, or what we do here in Sonoma County, and who we serve. And like Manning, I will say that my background is in public health. I have a master's of public health, and I've worked in hospital administration in New York City and in Chicago. And I have worked for 4 years with the Department of Psychiatry for a rather large Chicago hospital, where I was responsible for psychiatric services. So professionally, that's a bit of my background. But I'm also personally interested in mental health because when I was in college, I had a father who took his own life. And I did not grow up thinking that my father had any kind of a mental illness or mental health condition. But he fell apart very quickly for a variety of reasons in his early 60s. And at the time, my family, I know, did not know what to do about it. And things have changed a lot. There's much more information available, but we're still not there yet. There are many people who don't know where to turn when they're concerned about someone or themselves and what steps to take. And so I'm just really passionate about the need to make mental health a topic that we are comfortable talking about, comfortable asking questions about, and asking for help for. So NAMI is a nationwide organization. NAMI stands for National Alliance on Mental Illness. Our mission is to help anybody that's affected by mental illness. And we help both individuals who live with a mental health condition, and we help family members or caregivers, whether you're, and family members very loosely, but those people who support and care for somebody who is struggling with mental health challenges. So we exist at a nationwide level. We exist in each state. You'd find a NAMI state office, that's NAMI California. And then we look different as an affiliate. That's what NAMI Sonoma County is. Our sizes vary dramatically. So we're a mid-sized group. We have a very small staff, but much of our work is carried out by volunteers, people who are family members or people who have a mental health condition, who have been trained through NAMI's programs to deliver the services that we offer. And NAMI came about after the period of deinstitutionalization. That was the massive closing of mental health hospitals, typically the state hospitals across the country, which left for the first time many families responsible for the care of somebody who may have been institutionalized for years. And there was no support and very little funding support on top of that. And families were struggling because they hadn't been educated in these illnesses. They didn't have resources available to them. They didn't know what to do. And they began finding one another to self-educate and advocate for the needs for their loved ones. And it was in 1979 that NAMI formed this alliance, and its goal is to inform, to educate, and to advocate. We do not directly provide clinical services. So I just want to briefly say the difference between mental health and mental illness. I'm talking about mental health conditions affect people's ability to manage day to day, whether that's at school or at work or in their community. It affects how people relate to other people, how they handle their emotions, how they solve problems in their lives, how they handle stress, how we bounce back from setbacks in our life, and how whether we're able to realize our goals in life, to have a career or maybe have a house over our head. Mental health conditions are on a spectrum, so they can be very mild, and many people would never know that you have a mental health condition, or they can be moderate and they range up to very serious. Serious, typically the people that we are striving to support are people who have schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, for example, or major depression, and the family members supporting them. So that's an example of the kind of illnesses that we are primarily trying to help people with. And people with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder often will enter periods of psychotic behavior. So psychosis is a state of being. It is not necessarily a diagnosis, because you have one of these serious illnesses and you become obsessed with unrealistic thoughts or hearing things or seeing things that just are not backed up in reality. And they need crisis care often. So chances are that there isn't anybody listening tonight that doesn't know somebody who is affected by a mental health condition, because mental health, mental illnesses are actually quite common. And so just in brief, some statistics: 1 in every 5 adults experiences a mental health condition in every given year. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, it looks like my internet connection is not so great. 1 in 6 youth. 1 in 20, sometimes I see 1 in 25 are affected by one of the serious mental illnesses that I talked about. So the seriousness has to do with its impact on their ability to function in life. Half of all of these lifetime mental illnesses actually begin by age 14, and 3/4 begin by age 24. So this makes identifying the symptoms of a mental health condition, reaching out for help, getting treatment early on is really important. And that's when the greatest chance of success in recovery is. We're still experiencing from 2016 onward, we saw annual increases in our suicide rates. They have actually decreased a little bit during the pandemic. The suicide statistics lag, so we're not really going to know what the impact is for a couple of years out. But we are seeing a lot of suicidal ideation, and you just talk to our hospitals in the emergency departments, and they're seeing a lot of young people coming in with ideas of wanting to harm themselves or take their own life. And of course, overdose deaths. And while substance use disorders are not NAMI's primary area of expertise or whom we serve, the fact is that it is so common that people have both a mental health condition and a substance use disorder, often because of the side effects taking the medications. People make themselves feel better by using some sort of a substance. We always say mental illness does not just affect the individual with the illness, but it affects the entire household, the entire family, and it definitely has an impact on the community in which people live. Again, many people with a mental health condition also have a substance use problem. Just under 1/4 of the people who are experiencing homelessness also have a mental health condition. There are nearly half of all people with one of these serious mental illnesses, and I'm talking schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. They have a condition called anosognosia, always hard to say, sorry. You can you can try to explain to the end of the earth, they will never understand that they actually have an illness and they don't think they need treatment. And this makes it very difficult for the families who are trying to support them. Statistics tell us that 1 in every 8 emergency department visits these days is related to an emotional or a mental health disorder. In terms of getting care, there are many issues of the lack of affordability. We have a shortage of psychiatrists, shortage of social workers, a shortage of mental health professionals who speak Spanish or other languages that are not English, and a shortage of people in those professions who are people of color. And we have millions of Americans in this country. I don't have the statistics for Sonoma County, but people who are caring for an adult who has a serious mental health condition, and that adult has that condition maybe into their 40s, 50s, 60s. Their parents are trying to support them as best they can and worrying about what is going to happen to that person when they are no longer here to play that role. And it all speaks to systemic issues, gaps in services that we have to provide adequate mental health services for those in need. So I just want to briefly say mental health conditions, NAMI looks at them as illnesses. They don't happen because of a particular thing that happened, and they don't happen because someone did something wrong. And they're not due to because somebody doesn't have the willpower to get better, which is often attributed to people with depression. They are caused by multiple linking causes. And of course, we still have much to learn about how the brain works, but it is typically a combination of our genes, the stress of our lives, and our environment. And some of us are more vulnerable based upon those genes, or more vulnerable because we live in a community that has poor services or is exposed to violence. But we stress at NAMI that its meaningful life roles are possible even with a mental illness if the illness is identified early and the person gets support and they are willing to take an active role in their management. So this all boils down to the importance of education. These are basically groupings of the services that we offer. In terms of in our programs educationally, they are evidence-based. There's been a lot of research done to back them up. They are fact-based. We work with the National Institutes of Mental Health and the Centers for Disease Control in putting our programs and services together. We have an 8-week course called Family to Family. It's for anybody who is supporting somebody with one of these serious mental illnesses. We have a program 6 weeks called NAMI Basics. It's for parents of a child or an adolescent who has been either diagnosed or showing the stress of an emotional disorder. We do presentations for middle and high school students to try to normalize the conversation about mental health, share basic facts and statistics and make it engaging. And we share a story. So a young person shares their own story of having a mental health condition, how they got help and the difference that it made. We also are newly beginning to do suicide prevention awareness training, which we can do for groups. The method is called QPR, that's question, persuade, and refer. It's an established evidence-based program. And it's just to make people aware of how common it is and what they can do to be of help and how to get people to appropriate crisis counselors. We're not training people to be suicide crisis counselors. We do presentations. We're happy to do them for all kinds of groups, just like I'm doing this presentation this evening. We have a monthly newsletter that is free. We're starting a monthly speaker series open to the public. on a topic related to mental health once a month. Our first one is in late January. And NAMI Talks, we had a webinar presentation in which Manning Walker described the SAFE team, in which the Santa Rosa Police Department described the in-response team, in which the head of the mobile support team described what they do. And we had people from Sonoma County Behavioral Health, and we had an open forum on why the models have needed to change from law enforcement handling these crisis calls first, and to talk about what these models are happening within our county, who is being served, who is not being served, and the tremendous need for education about these, how to access these services, and the need for public support. Because you know, Petaluma 1.1 has come together with funding. Santa Rosa has come together with funding, and there are Measure O funds, but longer term support for these mobile crisis support teams, whatever they look like, is going to be needed. And it's going to take public education to understand their benefits and how they can save money. For example, keeping people with mental illness out of our jail. So we have ongoing support programs. We have support groups for family members. We offer a group for family members who speak Spanish. We have support groups for people living with a mental health challenge who are in recovery. We work with the mobile crisis support teams in the county. When they go to help in the field, they will talk with the family and they will refer the family to us. We will try to reach out to that family to see how we can connect them with either our programs or other more appropriate programs. We have wellness and stress relief groups, learning techniques that help people better manage day-to-day stress. And finally, the way to reach us is our warm line. So I will share those numbers. It's an 866 number, but it comes into our office. We are often a first place of inquiry for people to any kind of question related to mental illness, but we help people get information and referrals to appropriate resources if we're not the appropriate resources. And we can handle calls from Spanish speakers. So I just want to say we've been in existence since 1984, so about 37 years in Sonoma County. We do have an office in Santa Rosa that is not open and hasn't been open since I'm there. A couple of us are there, but we've closed our program, our in-person support groups and classes for the time being due to the pandemic. We hope to get back there, but because we offer all of our programs on Zoom these days, we've had tremendous growth in interest because many people want to partake in our programs, but find commuting to Santa Rosa difficult. And we also, many people know about NAMI, but there is no NAMI in Napa County. There is a very tiny NAMI in Marin. There is no NAMI in Lake County, and Mendocino County has had a very tiny office. And so we get calls from family members from each of those counties. And they are, since March of 2020, we have been incorporating people from those counties in our programs if they can participate by Zoom. Our programs are free of cost to the people participating. Our presentations, whatever we do, we are open to whomever reaches out to us. We have a website to learn more about our programs. Our warm line is this 866 number, or people can email us. So we help people learn about mental illness, why getting a diagnosis matters, how to access services, what to look for in a mental health provider, how to help someone who has been hospitalized for mental health treatment, how to help someone with a mental health condition who has been arrested. We do a lot of work with the jail. the district attorney, public defender's office, where to start looking for housing. We can't help them with housing, but we know the organizations in Sonoma County who can help. And I'm talking about housing needs for people with serious mental illness who cannot function on their own. And we work with Sonoma County patients' rights advocates. So if there are concerns there, we can help people get linked up with the right contacts for support. We really, I would say that the bulk of people that we're serving are people who are caring for somebody with one of these serious mental illnesses. And I will just say that what families want is to know that their loved one is in a safe place and stable. And they live in fear of when they become unstable, and it happens a lot. It happens a lot because people stop taking their medications, and it can be a revolving door, whether they go for treatment in an emergency department, in the hospital, end up in jail, on the streets. We deal with families that are experiencing all of the above, trying to help them and trying to support them. We have some major resources that are available. We have a guide for navigating a mental health crisis. We try to encourage people to create a plan to handle a crisis in good times, identify their sources of support, identify who to reach out to. And this is if you have somebody, a loved one who you think could be triggered and go into a crisis. Learn how to read the warning signs that the person is, moving toward a crisis state. Know how to act early. Know techniques of de-escalation. Know when to call for help and know where to get help. We do a lot. These slides came from our presentation when we were working with Santa Rosa's In Response team, but we work a lot, as I said, with the county mobile crisis teams and the SAFE team now. We want to educate people about the 3-digit number coming in July of 2022. 988 is going to be a new 3-digit number for people to be connected to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. NAMI and many other big mental health organizations are trying to get that number to be a number that is used for any kind of mental health crisis, not just a suicide-related crisis. And of course, we're watching how this is all going to be tied into reaching the SAFE team or reaching the mobile support teams or the In Response teams. All of that is being coordinated. We can talk to people about the lack of inpatient beds. We have major boarding problems in our hospital emergency rooms in Sonoma County, but this is not unique to Sonoma County. This is a national problem because of the lack of psychiatric inpatient beds. Both our county crisis stabilization unit and our hospital emergency departments sometimes have to hold people. I've spoke recently with somebody who had a 15-year-old who was on day 4 of being sedated in an emergency department because there was no youth appropriate mental health bed to send them to. And many times we are sending people out of county for in psychiatric hospitalization. This is difficult for the family. It's difficult for the family to try to provide support, to keep in touch, to understand what's happening. We can talk about Laura's Law in California. I just will go over these briefly. What LPS conservatorship and the challenges that come with that. This is conservatorship for a person that has been deemed a danger to themselves or to others or gravely disabled. And it's a very high bar to be able to prove that. We can talk about advanced directives with mental health in mind. Advanced directives are something that people create, as you might well know, when they are terminally ill to provide guidance for what kind of care they want toward the end of their life. There is something called psychiatric advance directives, which would give people a voice when they are feeling good about who they want to speak for them if they are in a mental health crisis and cannot speak for themselves. We're trying to educate the community about the role of peer support specialists, which are people who have had a mental health condition, who've lived experience, who go through training, and can then, they're just can be magnificent assistance to people experiencing mental health crisis, or as mentors or as supporters. And frankly, our programs at NAMI are peer-led. They're just led by family members most often, as opposed to people living with mental health conditions, except for the support groups we offer for people with mental health conditions. Those are definitely people who have lived experience with their own condition. And we are trying to educate the people what goes on in the jail. You know, the county has money to build a new mental health unit because our county jail was never designed to house people with mental health conditions. They are spending 23 hours a day in a cell in isolation, just exactly the opposite of what is helpful for somebody with an acute mental health condition. It's been going on, it feels like it's going on 5 years since funding was approved for that new unit. Wildfires, the pandemic have all gotten in the way, but we're trying to keep our eye on what is going to happen with that. I will just close by saying this is how we get our funding. So in 2004, voters in California approved Proposition 63, which created a tax on people who earn more than $1 million a year. It's a 1% tax. That money goes to Sacramento. It's distributed back to the counties. And there's very specific requirements for what kind of programs that money can support. But one of the requirements is some of those services need to support family members. And that's why we benefit from getting some of those funds. And that's because research tells us that the opportunity for recovery, wellness, resilience is so much higher when family or close people who can support and provide care for somebody through support. But supporting somebody with a serious mental illness is it can be very challenging. And so even family members need support and they need education. They need to learn about these illnesses. We also get money from Kaiser, Permanente, Providence, St. Joseph, and Community Foundation of Sonoma County. And finally, this is me, Mary Frances Walsh. The Warm Line is the best place to get information about what we do. Through our website, they can email us, and I am always happy to do a presentation on our services. You know, I'll end it there. Thank you. And I will say one more thing. We are just thrilled with what's happening with the SAFE team and the coming in response team. It's actually just opened up in Santa Rosa this week. It has a public launch next Tuesday. But changes are definitely happening in the way mental health crises are being responded to in Sonoma County. And it is just so important, because we talk with families weekly who experience these crises, who experience trying to support somebody who doesn't want help, who stopped taking their medications, whose behavior is frightening to the family or to the community that they live in. Anyway, I'll leave that there. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mary Frances. I'm sure we'll have some questions from the council and some comments. Okay, are there any questions from council members? Iris, and then Hannah.
My question is about, this is a tough one because families sometimes are not really aware that drug use or substance abuse is often a screen for mental illness, and it's hard for them to cope with the substance abuse. And so how do you educate people and get around that? In a sense, it's almost like the Agnes whatever word for people who don't believe that they have an illness, and the family in a sense is suffering from, well, if they just, kind of questions. So
okay,
guess
thank you.
Right.
Hannah, did you have a question?
Yeah. Is there any discussion in, I guess, the mental health world of reinstitutionalizing at the state or national level? Because it looks like it's been a failure and it really externalizes the whole problem onto families. And it just seems harsh.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Okay,
I'm not part of the council territory, if I may, but I have a question.
Sure, Karina.
Mary Frances, do you have bilingual staff answering the phone calls that come in? And also where, I know you're providing services for Sonoma County. Are you specifically providing services in the Valley as well? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So questions about the drug use as being kind of the predeterminer of, an indicator of mental health, reinstitutionalizing, and then bilingual support on the phone and in the Valley.
In terms of my experience, in terms of families first realizing that substance use may be a harbinger or a sign of a mental health condition is, I see this particularly with families of young people, and questions arising about use of cannabis and too much or ongoing. And I just, I don't have a magic answer. I do know that substance use disorder treatment and education awareness, all of that in Sonoma County has, there's a huge need. And I know that our Department of Health Services is working on this. They are going to be expanding their services, and they have offered they've offered some recent webinars about the cannabis use and the concerns. I know that it's not uncommon for families to seek support, our families to seek support from Al-Anon, and I often hear that they see many other families who are going to these Al-Anon meetings who don't quite get that underneath this substance use issue is a mental health condition. So I don't have a magic answer, Iris, but I think education continues to be so important. And, I can only respond to that through monthly speakers or through the courses that we offer on an ongoing nature. And of course, these, the family support groups, it is a common topic, people asking questions and sharing information about this. In terms of bilingual staff, this is a hard one. We recently lost our fully bilingual warm line specialist, so we're going to try to recruit another, but it is hard. And just like we have been in pandemic mode, it's been difficult for us to bring volunteers into the office to train them. I mean, this is just a low point in being able to respond, but it is absolutely our awareness that we need to increase our responsiveness to people speaking Spanish. I speak enough. I'm actually half Mexican, so that if I can get a conversation started, and our family support group leader, our Grupo de Apoyo para Familiares, will take a call. But I'd like to see that grow in use. But so I need someone beyond that. But recruiting has been a challenge. Just about reinstitutionalization, no, I don't think so. The law has been very clear that people with mental health conditions don't need to be warehoused, which is what happened with the institutionalization. They need community-based support and care. And when those institutions were closed, the promise, the hope was that institutions would be replaced by community-based support. And the funding has just never been there adequately to provide enough care, enough resources for everybody that needs help. The pandemic, I think, has brought about two things: much more discussion about mental health needs and awareness and support from the public at large, and of course our lawmakers as well. And there's been tremendous new funding being proposed at the federal level and some at the state level as well. It's coming, but none of that is being distributed until our Senate and Congress can get together and agree on a budget, so that money can begin to be distributed to the state levels, which will filter its way down to the counties. So we are partly on hold based upon, the failures of good political discourse, I think, in this country. But there is, I think, hope coming for greater funding.
Thank you. I'll move to public comment.
Para los miembros de la comunidad que desean hacer un comentario en español, por favor de utilizar la aplicación de levantar mano. Se les otorgará el permiso para hacer su comentario. Members of the public wishing to make a comment, please use the raise hand feature and we will allow you to make your comment. I don't see any raised hands, Chair Turi.
Great, thank you. Okay. Are there any final comments from council members? Thank you so much, Mary Frances, for being here.
Thank you. I'll say Manning was a hard act to follow. So thank you.
Well, I've already thought of like a bunch of different ways I'm going to use you in Petaluma. So thank you.
Okay. No worries.
All right. We really appreciate
thanks a lot.
it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. All right. So we have, so as I mentioned, Lily is not here. So we have two statements that we want to try to craft tonight. We do have a draft of one of them. We do not have a draft of a Plaza statement. So I don't know how far we'll get with that today. Karina?
Sorry, Chair Turi, if I may real quick, I just want to acknowledge Mary Carmen is connected. I don't know if she's active now. She was working at a clinic, a vaccine clinic, but I just wanted to acknowledge her presence.
All right. Hi, Maddie. So I thought maybe for the Plaza, we could just generate some ideas, and I'd like to hear from you. Now, we want to take this out of the context of who owns the property. This is about a vision for what we want to see. So I would just like to hear some ideas from the council. I'll take those ideas like I did with the SDC and try to craft a statement that I'll bring back to the group to try to do a group right now. Will not be successful, but it would be good to just hear some ideas. I'm sure you have some. Avram.
Well, we've had an idea. The ideas have been out there. I mean, basically the community has wanted for at least 20 years a central plaza for the Springs. Designs have been submitted in the past. There was a firm that and I don't have it in front of me, the name, and I'm sorry, I don't, but I can get that, that did a rough design for a plaza, and that it's deeply needed in order to create a sense of community in the Springs, just like the plaza was for the city of Sonoma. It's been far overdue, and we want to know that it is in our future, not 30 years from now, but hopefully within, I venture to say, if I say 5 years, it'll be 15. So let me say within the next 3 years. But it's just, you know, we've gone over this so many times. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Or 3 cents.
Iris?
Thank you. One thing I want to kind of note is that the spot is a little difficult because it's on a slope. So I keep thinking about how to do that. Certainly a green space, trees and plantings to soften and feel a little more welcoming would be near the top of my list. But also it is a relatively small space, honestly. So having how to manage the size of gatherings there is a thought. It's like, how's that going to work? Yeah, I guess those are, and you know, it's been used for the little farmers market, which was great. I don't know how that could be managed in the future if it is landscaped and everything, and sort of, I'm wondering if step down kind of treatment would mitigate the slope of the site. And of course, I think Ray would be better suited to speak to that than I, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Ray?
I wouldn't dare to get into the details of design, but I would just like to echo Avram's, you know, about this idea has been here around here a long time ago. I think I started with Mike Ross in 2006, and I think that was one of the first projects he gave me, was a study on how we could stop the end of the road there and build a plaza, and what could we do about parking. And so I remember looking at that, you know, way back when. So I mean, the idea is there. It's I think the gist of it is just to state our intention to if we haven't already, and make it public, that we feel is the you know, everybody seems to agree. You know, it's not ideal in a lot of ways, but it is the center of, and it is the available space that we have in our community to make that happen. So I think we just need to state that as our goal and our desire and our, you know, long-term, you know, plan.
Thank you, Ray. I do agree. We need to be much more intentional. Avram?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, from my understanding, and we've discussed this at least a year ago when we had an ad hoc committee for the plaza, that there were monies, or still are monies, available for the plaza. And if by a certain point we don't use those funds may just go right back into the general fund. And that would be a crime. And also, I think we have to be more aggressive in what we want. At one time, the owner of the of the repair shop was interested in selling at a very reasonable price to the county that spot. And if that was possible, I think we should help the current lessee be able to relocate to another location that is more conducive of a repair shop in the center of our community. I think we need to go for the gusto, because if we don't go for the gusto, we get nothing.
Thank you, Avram.
Mhm.
Jesus or Hannah or Mari? Hannah?
I would just like to see some place where we can have food trucks, and I'd also like to see some place that's not, you know, so often I've realized you need to spend money to be somewhere. So I would just like this to be a place where you don't need to spend money to be welcome there.
Okay, thank you. Mari Carmen or Jesus, anything you want to add before we go to public comment? No? Jesus? No?
No, thank you.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure I'm giving you time. Iris, is your hand up again?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It occurred to me that as far as parking, we would need handicap parking there. At least, you know, 2 or 3 slots for handicapped people.
Yeah, I think it would be required.
Yeah.
Okay, all
Thank
right. These are some ideas, and I do know that, you know, from the Plaza work that Ellen and Avram did in the past, we also have those notes too. So I'll craft something to bring back to the next meeting. But we will take public comment before we do that. I think there's a hand up. It's so hard for me to see. Yeah.
There is one raised hand, Gina. Let me get the timer up on the screen. You can hear me. Go ahead, state your name and make your comment, please.
Yes, hi, it's Gina Kuklis again. For those who you have know me and Avram and others, you know, I have been following this issue. It's been well over 20 years. My twins that are going to be 29 years old next month were infants at the time. We did the first set of design guidelines, and having a plaza was in those design guidelines done in the early 1990s. It was Michael Ross, by the way. Ray mentioned working for Michael Ross in 2006, and it was Michael Ross, I want to say maybe a decade ago now, you know, roughly, who did an actual design. I mean, he went to Springs Community Alliance meeting, short at a presentation, fountain and trees and where people can sit and how you deal with the slopiness. So I think whatever statement you're going to do, you know, you don't get into the details. The real point here is this reminds me of exactly where we were, why it took, every time we have an idea, there's something we want, it takes decades for the county to produce. We 30 years to get our 2 miles of sidewalks, and we're going on 30 years to get the plaza. And there was, you know, funding that came out of the redevelopment. It doesn't exist anymore, la-di-di-da. There's a whole lot of transit occupancy tax that is collected in the Springs that pretty much leaves the Springs. So the excuse is not that there's no funding, it's that it's not a priority at the county. And the rest of the Board of Supervisors, not simply the one who represents the valley, but the rest of them need to know that the people in the Springs are tired of being put off and being put off and being put off. And that this project we've been waiting for years, and we have the street blocked off because of it. And I know I have, in the last few recent years, I've spoken to members of the Board of Supervisors, and there is a definite attitude on a couple of them that, hey, we gave you the sidewalks, one and done. What are you complaining about? That was a big project. We did it. There's not, you can write all the statements you want, but without really getting in front of people and really making it clear that this promise is unkept, services lacking, it's just not going to move forward. So your statement needs to be a strong action statement and not a statement detailing what is supposed to be in a plaza, but that a plaza is needed and time to make it happen.
Okay, any other comments?
I don't see any more raised hands, Chair Turi.
Any final comments from council? Alrighty, I'll bring something.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for making it a priority, Maite. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Avram, for recognizing that and acknowledging it. I appreciate that. All right. Okay, so are we on to the last topic? Let me consult my map for the evening. Okay, we're on to the SDC statement. So I think the council has seen it. Karina, is that correct? They have not. Okay, sorry about that. I wasn't sure. Can we put it up on the screen? It's very brief. I took the comments that you all sent. Thank you. Just that we approve this on the following day. That we've heard the variety of interests regarding the development, some competing and some are complementary. There's some commonalities and agreements among the stakeholders that we've heard from, and we are in agreement in the following areas. And then this is an opportunity for us to change anything in this statement. So there's a strong desire to find a fourth option for SDC land that is inclusive of our community, that values the diversity of our population, especially our vulnerable population, including Latinx and elders. That there's owner occupied affordable housing to be the forefront of any future SDC development. There's providing a second access to Highway 12 from the east side of SDC campus should be a priority for emergency egress and possibly as a permanent thoroughfare to alleviate pressure on the existing road infrastructure. Limit traffic congestion problems on 2-lane highway by providing adequate transportation options. Maintain the wildlife corridor. Include a community facility that includes a plaza, community hall, park, sports field, a performing arts theater, and educational opportunities for the trades. Include a mental health outreach or crisis center for youth and adults. Fire safety and climate resiliency that are taken, oops, sorry, there are typos. I'll get it cleaned up. I have an editor. Taken into consideration our current reality. And then just some notes that I threw in at the very end, and that these suggestions are based from the Sonoma Municipal Advisory Council members, the housing group, and other community members. So is there, Karina, are you able to change things for us if people, as the council makes comments?
Absolutely. Yes, I'm able to.
Thank you for correcting my very quick, sketchy draft. I can't see you all, so I'm just going to go around and call you out. And if you don't have anything to say, that's fine. But since I can't see you, I'm just going to do a roll call. Councilperson Lombard, do you have anything you want to add to this or any changes that you want to make? I know there's not a lot, you haven't been given a lot of time with it.
If there's a way to strengthen the wildlife corridor, it is a pinch point, as they say, in the stretch that goes from Napa to the coast. If there's a way to say something a little more about making it wider. The other thing is, I also wondered, you've included mental health outreach or crisis center. Is there a way to have a community health center there? Because the services in that part of the valley are skimpy, I would say. I don't know if that could, if that's too big of an ask.
Go big or go home.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Perot.
I think I like what it says about housing. I'm personally my big issue, I guess, is with the whole way that the discussion's being done. Like, how do we know? I guess I just don't understand why the public gets to say where there is or isn't housing. And I think I'd like to learn more about, does this project pencil when we have to take care of so much infrastructure and historical rehabilitation? And why are we not talking about that?
So you want something mentioned about,
I don't think I want anything mentioned.
okay.
It's fine.
All right.
Thanks.
I tried to incorporate that you want to make sure that there's housing, that I just didn't put a number to it because I also don't know how that's all penciling out.
Yeah, I guess I just don't understand. Are all these things we're saying, are they even going to get put into the cake that they're baking? I mean, that's it's like kayfabe or whatever, you know, it's political theater, and it just, I get very burnt out. We've all received a lot of messages from people who are very passionate about very many different things here, but at the end of the line, does this plan pencil financially? And everything we're saying and getting upset about, does it matter when it comes down to the fiscal reality of what is necessary to redevelop this whole large parcel? And does anything that we say, it's not binding? So I don't know. I just don't want people to feel like, but I said I need housing, and it's like, well, that's not what we're getting. So I don't know. I guess I would recommend caution. I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with what you're saying. But I also know that that we have to, if you don't say what you want, you won't ever stand a chance of getting it. So it's important that you have to hold people accountable and state what you want. Otherwise, well, nobody ever said that you wanted a mental health facility, or that was never mentioned, or vulnerable communities. What are you talking about? So the statement needs to be made. What happens with it is really out of our control, but we have to be able to make these statements and come together as a group. This is a group. This is a statement made by a group of people who've been identified as representing the community in the Springs.
Right. I guess what
statement.
I almost would like more visibility on the financials of this. You know, I think that we need to think as a community, if we're building something, does it pass the sustainability test in terms of tax revenue? My takeaway from the meeting with the combined max and the consultants was that they originally had more houses plotted in there because they need more houses to offset all the infrastructure. And it's like, are we setting ourselves up for a disaster in terms of, you know, not having enough tax bases to maintain this new development? So that's something that I don't know how to explain that. Just more visibility on the long-term feasibility on all this infrastructure. You know, I don't know why the state of California didn't take care of it up till now, but you know, if we have all these affordable homes, are we going to have lower taxes on them because they're affordable, and thus we won't be able to maintain the infrastructure as well? Just something about, are we building something else that won't be sustainable? And being honest with ourselves about what we're building here. So that would take a lot of, it's hard to know though, until we come up with a plan if something would be financially feasible. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And it's tough. I know it's not.
I'm like, okay, let me think about that.
Sure. Just something about, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I lost track of who I've asked. Avram?
Yeah.
And Maite, this is Susan. I needed to take a break, but I'm back again. Hannah, in answer to your question, it's not our role to pencil out what is feasible. It is our role to advocate for what we want to see in the specific plan on the campus. This group, powerful group, is one of a number of groups making comments. And it's sausage making at this point, but be bold. What do you want to see on the SDC campus that would benefit this community.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, I think I left off with Avram.
It's been interesting to receive the letters. I think the bottom line, we were all at the meeting of the different groups, that none of the three plans that were presented have any community support or very, very limited community support. To put in housing in that area, we are a rural community. And what we're trying to do is put a square peg in a round hole or vice versa. We've got a wildlife corridor. That area was never meant to be for housing. We've got a 2-lane road in that area. It was suggested that the lowest number of housing units were 900. Even if you say 2.5 persons per household, and it's probably closer to 3, that's 2,700 people. That's more than 3 times the population of Glen Ellen. It will totally change the entire characteristic of the Sonoma Valley. I think Terry Shore's letter that we all read basically says that what we have here is really a jewel, a gem, and we need to preserve that, not just for us, but for future generations. And I get that input from many people in my community here in the Springs. They don't want to see a huge development. They don't want to see a hotel. This state has to step up and create this resource as a gift to all Californians, and particularly our communities. A couple of examples of that. One is Bolinas. In the 1970s, they were going to develop Bolinas into a hotel, a marina, and upper end housing. And a group of Marinites got together and fought tooth and nail to preserve that area. And they were successful. The same thing with Marin Headlands. I think what we really need to do, I can't argue what should be in there and what shouldn't be in there, but what we do know is we don't have community support. That's number one. And number two, we're going to have to come up with a different plan. And that means putting it on hold. And I know the county has said, we've got a deadline, we're going to meet that deadline, or the state's going to give it to some private developer, and it's going to be all resort or second homes, big houses, whatever. I think we really have to work together with our state representatives and let them know that you cannot create a huge urban area in a rural area. It doesn't work. So the only thing I would like to see in there, that this be put off and have more community support to develop a plan that the community can get behind.
So is that represented in the first bullet that says a fourth option?
Yes, because we can't dictate what's going to happen. The community should dictate that. And apparently we weren't able to do that. And I don't want to go in, I don't know why, but there has certainly been a tremendous amount of resistance to any of the plans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesus, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes. Sorry.
It's okay.
Well, I agree with both Hannah and Abraham about their opinion. Hannah, one side, more affordable housing, one Abraham, something for the community. And I see the conflict, and ideally for I lean more onto affordable housing because housing is a fundamental, and I understand that the impact that will bring that will cause in the SDC, but I feel like I also agree with Abraham about doing something for the community, and I think that all of the organizations that are in charge to give input and decide the fate of the Sonoma Developmental Center, to make accountable of the future contractors to do something meaningful and for the community. So whatever it is, I want to be beneficial for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesus. Ray?
The only thing speaking only to the list at the moment, the only thing I really think we're missing is, and I think that was in one of our comments too, maybe it was Terry Shore's comment, that there's a goal to conserve land, 30% goal. I think that's a national goal that it's part of the 2030 project or something. So if I think most of the land out there, 700 acres, is undeveloped. So the rest of it is brownfield. It's previously developed. It's to me, it's as an architect and a person with a background in urban planning, this is area that is perfect for, it has infrastructure, it has a grid system, it has, maybe it's dated, whatever. It's the correct place for development. We have in Sonoma County, we have a policy to develop within an urban growth boundary. And that's why we have the development patterns that we have with the rural areas in between cities. This would become another urban growth area. And I think it should be treated just as that. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Ray. I think Mari is last. Did I miss anybody? Mari Carmen.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Karina, would you mind putting or sharing the screen again, please? Thank you. So I think that what really comes to my attention, and in addition, or to when I've driven by there, in addition to the state hospital, was seeing the community facilities for sports for youth or for adults as well. I think that that's something that I would personally like to see. I think that it's something that we need to create more opportunities for recreation for the entire community, from children to aging adults. And so I think that, of course, if it's possible to have a well balance of some housing, maybe some businesses, but also keeping, the nature aspect to it, which really a lot of people hike there. And I really think that we still need, like I think it was Ray saying, having the urban area. So trying for it to be something well balanced, that it's not too much of any extreme. Also, I personally, even being Latina, I think that we really need to add other Latinas and elder population are not the only vulnerable populations. So I would just keep it as the values of the diversity of the community of Sonoma Valley, because we have other diverse groups here as well. And sometimes when we just focus on one, we forget about the others. And I just would like to reiterate that, that we remember that it's all of us, the inclusivity, of course, never forgetting equity in the process, but being inclusive also. Thank you.
Any other comments from council members? Karina, can I ask you a process question here?
Sure.
When do we need to have this completed by? Because I feel like it needs to have another go around, and our next meeting is early February.
Right. So the next Board of Supervisors meeting is January 25th, and there is an item on SDC. So if you want this statement to be considered, it does need to be submitted before that or the day of at the latest. So you really have to come up with a statement today and approve today and submit if that's what you wish.
Okay.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
I think it almost needs kind of a two-part. One, meaning that the process needs to have a second look or a fourth option. That's number one. That's sort of the headline, because the community needs to continue to speak to what it wants. And I think the second part, and all these different things that we have on there is kind of a menu. These are some of the concerns that we would like to see as an advisory board. In other words, we're not going to dictate sort of, but these are some of the suggestions. I think the big thing is if the county is going to vote on one of the three, then all this other stuff is moot. I think the big thing is stop the process. Otherwise, the other stuff doesn't matter. Does that make sense?
Yes. Iris, is your hand up again?
Yes, it is. And I'm sorry, I was running out of battery on my computer, so I put my screen off. It seems to me that part of the takeaway on this is that the community overall does not want this to be a profit-driven project, that the wants of the community for low-income housing, for community space, for playing fields, recreational facilities, and mental health clinics or a medical health clinic are basically for community, and they're not things you make money off of. And the process the state dictated and the county has supported has been that this has to be a moneymaker for the developer, and they didn't leave the space to explore nonprofit development. So perhaps with Avram's idea of asking for the fourth option, which is I think a very good one, we could say that the community doesn't want a profit-driven project.
Thank you.
Thank
So we're going to go to public comment, and then Karina, I have a question about an idea after we hear from the public.
Members of the public who wish to make a comment, please use the raise hand feature at this time, and you will be allowed to make your comment. Para los miembros de la comunidad que desean hacer un comentario sobre esta agenda, por favor de usar la aplicación de levantar mano y se le otorgará el permiso. In the order I see them, so far I see 4 raised hands. Chief Aker, Gina, Josette, and Meg. Chief Aker, go ahead when you see the timer on your screen. Can you hear us, Chief?
I can. I'm not seeing a timer, but happy to start.
I apologize.
Thank you. No. Thank you, Karina, and thank you, Chair Turi. You know what? Obviously, as I've spoken to the MAC before, I have a vested interest in a couple of different very important ways as a 50-year-old, Valley resident and born, raised here, grew up here, have continued to live here for all of my, basically all of my life. I have a vested interest in that way, but also as your fire chief, I have another way of looking at things, another lens. And I would say, first of all, as a Valley resident, I wholeheartedly support, what's been proposed is that what is open space in the SDC area is going to go to either the state or the regional parks, the vast majority of the 900 and some odd acres. The 187 acres that has been developed previously as kind of the core campus, I think is what we're all focused on. And you know what, it has been developed. And I would, as a resident, as a father, as someone who looks for opportunities for his kids to be able to maybe in some way, shape or form, be able to afford to live here in the Valley. I look forward to the opportunity for having sustainable, affordable housing. I also look forward to, and I don't think this is on the list of ideas, but education and job training. I know this is something that has been mentioned before through conversations with SDC, but I think that's an important one. Lastly, I'll switch hats here into the fire chief mode. Of course, traffic, access, egress, fire safety is of my utmost priority and importance. But what I want to make sure that we that we emphasize, I guess, with the process is that we have the infrastructure. The state has provided fire and law enforcement services for over 100 years. Local government cannot provide that. That has to continue in some way, shape, or form, and it needs to be addressed through the process. Again, the state has provided that, and we need that to continue. Thank you.
Thank
Right
you
on
very
time,
much,
thank you.
Baker.
Gina, go ahead.
Yes, hi, it's Gina Kuklis. I just wanted to share something you might want to include in your letter. Part of the conversation going on right now is the idea of having we and the Board of Supervisors lobbying our state legislators, we have 5 of them for Sonoma County, to have the state put in money for the cost of the infrastructure. Because saying how expensive updating and upgrading and the infrastructure is the reason why they have to have, all this housing, all this would not be near affordable housing that they have planned. So that is something to include. I think we're going to need to advocate for that. And I just want to suggest maybe you mention it in that letter, if this is actions to the Board of Supervisors to work on lobbying through our legislators, lobbying the state to put in some funding to the infrastructure costs. I also want to add, if you're going to conclude the word vulnerable populations, and you mentioned 2, long time conversation has been about, for several years now, has been about housing for disabled individuals, for developmentally disabled individuals on this site. And so I would make sure to include that if you want to identify, that's a very key population that we've been discussing about for a long time. So I would encourage you to include that, so you're kind of in alignment with the conversation that has been going on for a very long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Chair Turi, if I may real quick, Mary Carmen has had to excuse herself. She just wanted you to be aware.
Okay, thank you.
Next we have Josette. Go ahead, Josette.
Hi, I want to mention quickly, I noticed that you have a road to Highway 12 for fire safety. I do want to mention that putting that in there is actually going to, if you talk to the Land Trust and the Ecology Center, that's actually not a good idea with preserving the open area for wildlife. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that I did attend the North Valley MAC meeting earlier, and they've put together a very detailed letter and appendix where they go through many of the important points that you've had here in detail. And it might be good to look at that, to look at the letter and and they were revising it tonight, because I think it will put each of the items into perspective, and you might be able to use that to summarize what it is. And I think they hit all the important points. It's too detailed for me to, say it all now, but they really got into detail on housing, sustainability, job training, offering various community benefits. So I would encourage you to take a look at that if you have time before you put this all together. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Who's next, Karina?
Thank you. Let's see, up next we have Meg. Meg, can you hear us? Meg, are you there? We're going to go on with Lieutenant Piccinini.
Okay, here I am.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, as a member of the community, I like what everybody's been saying, and that it not be a profit-making thing. The world has enough of that. I'm really into things that are sustainable and maybe an example of what can be done for a community. This community doesn't really have, like a swimming pool for the kids. It doesn't have a big old soccer field for the kids. Things that are for the families and for the kids, and also places where maybe yoga instructors can rent out a space and do their thing and have classes come and have, different classes in the trades, but not a lot of new building, making use of and maybe adding solar power and things like that to the building that's already there, and keeping it, to go with Sonoma. Otherwise, you're kind of like building a whole new town over there. It sounds like, because Sonoma's small, and but there isn't enough for families to do here. And I don't like hearing about low-income housing because it never really is. People use that word and it's still housing that nobody can afford unless they're pretty rich. So let's just say I don't believe that that would really happen. And also it would bring too much traffic. It's better to have like a theater for the theater arts and things like that, where people come in and spend a couple hours and then they go out again. And, and that's where the plaza and the picnic area could be. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Meg.
Thank you, Meg. Up next, we have Lieutenant Piccinini. Can you hear us? Lieutenant, are you there?
Does that work?
Yep.
Yes, now we can. Perfect.
Sorry about that. First of all, my hat's off to this advisory committee for everybody putting in such great thoughts to everything regarding the SDC project. There's a part of me that says the affordable housing is a great thing because I too have family in the area and would love to see all my family be able to afford and continue to stay in Sonoma County and grow up in the beautiful county that it is. The other portion of me I'll go back to what Chief Baker was speaking to, is bringing 988 homes to that area is going to have a tremendous impact on the infrastructure, along with the services that are for the citizens, our community members of the Valley. And how is that going to look in the future? How are we going to be able to support all those folks? Where are those folks going to work? If we're just focusing on placing homes in this area, when a majority of the area is already commuting in and out of this area, our roads are not going to be able to withstand and maintain that constant day-to-day use, along with being able to support repaving from year to year and the law enforcement, fire services, and other services that go into those communities. One of the things I heard was go big or go home. I couldn't agree with you more. You folks need to plan for this development and what it's going to look for 100 years from now, and not what it's going to look like 10 or 20 years from now. And I think that's really what you guys are looking for in the conservation of the wildlife and the impact of the homes are going to be and all that. So with that said, there was one other point that I had wrote down. I've lost it in my notes here, but in all reality, my hat's off to this advisory committee for really trying to work through all these difficult things. You guys are tasked with a very difficult situation. And I hope the county does listen to you and listen to everybody out there and make the best decision for that development. One of the big things I'll come back to is what Meg said, for the buildings that are already there. Maybe is there a plan to just reconstruct and remodel those buildings so the impact is less intrusive to the environment and to the area out there, along with the community surrounding it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. If you think of the other thing, you can always email us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your perspective. Is there someone else?
Yes, up next we have David. David, if you can hear us, go ahead and make your comment.
Yes, David Eicher. It's really a shame that you don't have more time. As my wife explained earlier, that we attended the North Sonoma Valley MAC meeting, where they had an ad hoc committee put together a really great letter and appendix with a lot of detail covering what the community, the Sonoma Valley community, thinks and wants, thinks about the alternatives and want there at the SDC site. And so, I understand you don't have that much time, but you don't have to complete it tonight. You have two options. I see you can continue this meeting, say for next week, or have a special meeting in another week. And I think you can take that time to look at what the North Sonoma Valley MAC put together, and maybe not have to kind of duplicate it and go through everything, but put together a letter saying that you support what the North Sonoma Valley MAC has put together to the supervisor, and also go through what the Sonoma Land Trust and the Sonoma Ecology Center has put together on this, and say you support these organizations, you trust them, and that the supervisors should listen to them. We recommend that you supervisors that you pay close attention to what they are saying. But briefly, in going over some of these things, in terms of affordable housing, everyone seems to miss that it can't just say affordable housing. It needs to have all income levels, extremely low, very low, lower and moderate. Because if we just say low income housing, moderate income housing, which is basically market rate at this time. But other things to look at, to say in general, is that you want the community wants things which are community oriented, not for tourists. And the number one thing that has come out from me attending a lot of different meetings on this is that the number one concern is that wildlife corridor, because once it's gone, it's really detrimental to the wildlife in the area. So that is the absolute number one, I think, in all of this. And the other main thing is these alternatives say, okay, the developer has to be economically feasible. But the county and the state needs to look at this, and the state needs to take responsibility. The county needs to tell the state, hey, listen, you need some responsibility for the dilapidated infrastructure that you left here. You need to use some of the funds from the federal infrastructure bill that was passed for, and specifically, a lot of it is earmarked for water and for
Thank you,
electrical
David.
grid.
That
Thank
does
you.
conclude your time. Thank you.
All right. I think that was the final comment.
Yes, I don't see any more raised hands at this time, Chair Turi.
So what I'm going to suggest and what David has brought up is that we, I take the comments, do the best we can to incorporate some of those. I'm also about brevity, and I find that people tend to not read much that's written after page 1, maybe 2. So I'm going to try to keep it succinct. I do know that the North Valley MAC put in tremendous amount of time and effort into theirs, and they did a beautiful job, but we're the Springs Valley MAC, or the Springs MAC. And so we've got our perspective as well, that we want to be sure that our voices are heard. So I'm going to take the comments that were made tonight by council and by the community, and then also take David's recommendation and suggest that we have a meeting to approve a letter coming up, a short meeting, one topic meeting that we approve the letter. We'll have to look for a time and a date to be able to do that here in the next week. Is that agreeable to council?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. It would be, I would love to have the chance to see what the North Valley put together, just to see their point of view. If Karina can get a hold of a copy and send that out.
Is that possible, Karina?
It's public record. So if you go to and for the community as well, if you'd like to access it, you go to the North Sonoma Valley MAC webpage and access it there. Just so the community is aware.
Could you send that link to us, Karina? Could you send that link?
Sure, happy to send that.
Thank you.
So are there any other comments that the council would like to make in closing before?
And Chair Turi, there needs to be a motion to have a special meeting if that's the direction that you'd like to take.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to have a special meeting to review our letter to the supervisors in terms of the SDC development.
Is there a second?
I second. Iris.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Ray and Jesus, are you okay with that?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will put together a meeting.
If I may, Chair Turi, I think the motion was to review, discuss the statement, but you also need to approve it. So you may need to revise that motion. If you want it.
Can you add approve?
I would like to add to my motion to approve a statement to the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you.
Concerning the SDC development.
Iris, do you still second that?
I second, thank you.
Is everyone still in agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Aye.
Good. All right. Okay. So are there any other comments before we close this item?
I kind of would like to say something, and that's just, I did say this in my letter to you, but there's a tremendous amount of actual studies that show that the people who make public comments about new development, especially multifamily development or affordable development, are predominantly white, older, and longtime residents and homeowners. Their point of view does not necessarily reflect that of the broader public, who tends to be more favorable. So I just think that we have a selection bias going on here. And I would just like to kind of take that into account, or just keep that in mind, that people who tend to speak up about this don't reflect the average person in their view. That's it.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay. If there are other things that come to you later on, you can email Karina and she'll get them to me. All right, we'll close this item then. Thank you all. Okay, consideration of future agenda items. So what we have for February is Caltrans pedestrian plan and Donald Gap, rentals and spring specific plan. For March, we have City of Sonoma shared governance and Parks and Rec presentation. And then I did hear a couple of other items that were suggested. The skate park, that was one of them, with Nick. Ray?
That was it.
Okay.
That was it. Yeah, I think you should get Nick on soon. I think they're moving ahead quick with that, and I think we should see what's happening. I'm excited to. I think they've got some plans that the community can get excited about and get behind. So I'd like to see Nick come in soon.
All right, we'll see if we can get him in February.
I don't think he'll take long.
Okay, thank you. Iris?
Maite, if we're going to make a statement about the plaza, should that be on the?
Yep, thank you. Anything else? I think there's a public comment.
Yes, I do see one raised hand. Chief Aker.
Hi, me
Go
again.
ahead.
Hi.
Hi. So in February, I don't want to take up time tonight. I know we've had a really long meeting, but I would love to be able to provide the MAC an update on our continued vegetation management program and how we're expanding that within the fire district. Really excited about that, but would like to provide a more detailed update on that in February.
Thank you, Chief Aker. Chief Aker, we may have to get you as like a honorary member of the MAC or something. Do you live in the Springs?
You know, and right now I live in the city, unfortunately, but you know, I could always this
you might want to consider moving.
But I could fudge and live at Station 3, which is in Agua Caliente, but you know, truly love to be a part of this and appreciate to be a part of all that you are doing. It is amazing work, and I'm honored. So thank you.
I'm sure you've got a cot there at Station 3 somewhere. So, all right. Is there anything else?
I don't see any further raised hands.
Okay. So thank you all. It has been a long meeting, but I think all the topics were super important, and I'm really grateful to our presenters, Manning, and to Mary Frances from NAMI. So thank you all. Thank you to Supervisor Gorin for being here and sharing with us information about what's happening at the county, and to Ariel for streaming on Facebook, and Lynn Marie for her note-taking, and Jordi for his interpreting. He must be exhausted. And Karina for everything you do to make this meeting happen. Thank you. Thank you. Is there something I'm missing?
I just want to acknowledge territory that we have Keith Liu from General Services. He was specifically tuned in to listen to the Plaza statement item. Just want to acknowledge him that.
Oh, thank you, Keith, for being here. We will have some kind of statement for you to read soon, we hope. All right, Karina and I will get back to you about our meeting time for the finalization of our statement. Again, my deep gratitude to all of you for being here. And may I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second? Ray, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, y'all. Have a beautiful evening. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Bye,
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you, audience.